All right. Hey, what's up? Welcome to a new episode of the podcast. Today is the 18th of October, 2020. And a few days have gone by ever since the NBA Finals are over. And that means we can start unraveling about the new NBA season. And with that new season, it comes trades, it comes free agents, it comes draft picks, and etc. And some of the trades and some of the signings a team will make could either get them to a middle of the pack team, to a championship team. And what we are going to talk about is every Eastern Conference and Western Conference team. We're going to be starting with the Eastern Conference. And we're going to go into what moves every team can do, such as draft picks, free agent signings, and potential trades. So without further ado, I guess we can start off with the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, Armands, what do you see Philadelphia making here?
Well, obviously, the two things that they should be looking for this offseason is trying to unload Tobias Harris's contract as well as Al Horford's. It's going to be a tough thing to do because those are huge contracts, and I don't think any team necessarily wants them. But if you look at the draft picks they have a total of 5 draft picks in this year's draft, meaning they can maybe use some of the draft picks to unload either Tobias or Al Horford. And if you look at the key free agents they have, not really much. It's just a couple of rentals that they signed for this year, as well as what they traded for Alec Burks and Glenn Robinson. Do you think they will return for next year?
I think they could return if they get them on a cheap deal because they have these huge contracts already on their team. But I'm not 100% certain yet. Just because they're rentals, that means they're easily disposable. So I'm not 100% sure yet.
Alec Burks is probably the player that a lot of teams will be looking at because he's probably like that cheap off the bench scoring option that also Philly would need. But I think it's clear that their number one need for at least this offseason is finding players who can shoot. Because you see Ben Simmons and Embiid, it's clear that you need 3 shooters in your lineup to at least have, a decent offense. And right now we've lined down potential trade candidates. I think Chris Paul is the one guy that's going to be in the news for a long time this offseason because he's rumored to go to like a lot of teams, Milwaukee, even the Knicks, as well as Philadelphia. Buddy Hield, the player who could, has his issues in Sacramento. He's getting also kind of old. Did you know he's 27?
Yeah, I knew he was an old rookie coming into the league. I think he finished 3 or 4 years when he was at Oklahoma around that time, but I knew he was a little bit on the older side.
It's like he's basically in his prime, and it's like he's only starting off, his contract off of his rookie contract.
Yeah.
But yeah, we also have Seth Curry, who we know is a really great 3-point shooter, as well as Otto Porter Jr., who's been rumored to be a possible trade candidate either for Al Horford or Tobias Harris. What do you think of these guys?
Wait, what these guys? Are you talking about the candidates?
Trades, yeah.
The trades, I think, personally, Chris Paul would be I think all of them would be a great addition. I could see myself with Tobias Harris for an Otto Porter trade package because, Otto Porter is a little bit cheaper than Tobias, and Otto Porter is more of a 3-point specialist than Tobias is. So I think it'd be a win-win for either team. Chicago would improve. They could get another, decent score all around with shooting. And, Philly could get that bigger stretch piece. But Buddy Hield and Seth Curry also are solid options for the team. I think they'd work regardless, wherever they're at.
I think Otto Porter would work really well because he's going into his last year of his contract. Meaning, technically, Philadelphia could shut off Tobias' contract for like a 1-year player. Then they would have, all that cap space that they could use potentially in signing other free agents because, let's be honest, the Tobias Harris max contract signing wasn't really what everybody was hoping for. They probably wanted Jimmy Butler signed instead of Tobias, but it is what it is, and I think Otto Porter would be a great candidate. I don't know how Chicago could benefit from this. I don't think they're really that ready for a playoff contention. But, Tobias Harris and Zach LaVine, they could definitely, win some games.
Oh, yeah, they'll definitely get, more wins. It's just that they're not win now, necessarily. We haven't seen what Billy Donovan can do yet, and we haven't seen how the young players will flourish with Zach LaVine and Gafford and Markkanen and all those other guys.
Speaking of Billy Donovan, what do you think about Doc Rivers for Philadelphia?
I don't know necessarily. He was great in Boston, although he's been choking 3-1s, left and right. I don't know, but he may be that, spark that Philadelphia needs, because I haven't seen Doc Rivers in a system like this in a while, where you see, such gifted players with Ben Simmons and Joel, but only time will tell, really.
All right. And what do you think of, some possible free agent signings, some cheap options that you could probably get for like the mid-level exception, something to bolster their shooting? I really like Etwan Moore. I think he could be a target for most of the teams because of COVID and everything. Not a lot of teams have cap space to sign players to lucrative deals, so I think Etwan Moore is going to be that one guy who's going to be looked at by multiple teams.
Yeah, I think he could be that perfect, he could be a starter caliber shooter, but he can also come off the bench and do whatever he needs. So I think he'd be a great asset for a cheap deal on any team, as well as Courtney Lee. Courtney Lee is getting up there in age, but he can still shoot, which is what Philly needs. But if they want to go a little bit extra with the cash, they can also sign Davis Bertans and Joe Harris. So, we'll see what they do. I'm not sure if they're ready to contend this season, so I guess the cheaper options would be better. However, going for a little bit more expensive options wouldn't also hurt either, because if they get the better options, we can see Ben Simmons, get more assists, or Joel Embiid, not exert himself as much on offense.
I think Davis and Joe Harris both are pipe dreams. They don't really have that much money to spend, and other teams can offer more. But I think the reason why we have these two players up is because they would help Philadelphia tremendously with their shooting. It's just that, it isn't likely, but, those are some players that Philadelphia could be looking at, because shooting is like their number one need.
Yeah.
All right, should we move on to...
Yeah, we'll go on to the next team.
Milwaukee Bucks.
So for Milwaukee, what we've noticed so far in the playoffs, or I guess not everybody has noticed, is that I think they clearly need that second option, or a third option, I guess you can say, if you count them under Chris Middleton. Milwaukee's offense, it's somewhat fairly predictable. They drive and kick, and they just use Giannis, make him kick it out, and they just help on the shooters. So what we could use here for potential trades is that they could go for a Chris Paul package, maybe trade Eric Bledsoe, a few picks. They could do Drew Holiday, which would be perfect for Milwaukee, because he could get that well-needed shot creating. But also, a stretch who could maybe assist Giannis and, Brook Lopez with Bielitsa. So I think those three options would be great trades for them. But also, it could help them, it'll help them during the middle of the game and later of the game when you need a shot to fall, mostly with Chris Paul and Drew Holiday.
Like, if Chris Paul doesn't fall off, like if he still holds himself to his standards that he had in Oklahoma, an all-star, he could definitely help Milwaukee get over the hump because of his leadership. What is he now, 35, 36 years old?
Yeah, 35.
A lot of experience, man, and I think Chris Paul would, be a tremendous upgrade over Eric Bledsoe. Even though his time is closing, I think 1 or 2 years of Chris Paul, that could help maybe convince Giannis to stay in Milwaukee, because I think that's probably their number one priority, is trying to keep Giannis happy. I think that's what they should be looking for.
Yes, because Giannis has been in all these, trade, and all these free agent rumors. He's been the talk of the free agency for next season. We see leading candidates such as Miami and Dallas, but Milwaukee hasn't ignored the fact that they're after, teams are after him, so they're trying their best, really. So, do you think they should pull the plug on a CP3 trade or a Drew Holiday trade?
I think so. I don't think the team's going to look like we've seen so far. I think they're probably going to make 1 or 2 changes to their starting lineup. And looking at the key free agents, I see players like Robin Lopez and Wesley Matthews, who are kind of, players who played some minutes in games. Do you think they should bring them back, or do you think they should go for other options?
I think they could, if they don't get necessarily what they need, I could see them bringing back. I could see them bringing back. I could see them bringing back Wesley Matthews. I forgot his name for a quick sec. They could bring Wesley Matthews back on a cheap contract. Other than that, I don't know if they should bring back Lopez or Pat Connaughton necessarily. You know, Pat Connaughton, he's a fan favorite there because he has a crazy vertical. But other than that, I don't necessarily see bringing back Brook Lopez helping them as much.
Yeah, if you look at possible free agents, we've also listed players like DeMarcus Cousins. Like, if you're in a win now mode, you know what DeMarcus brings. Of course, he's had his injury history, but if he's healthy and ready, you know what that kind of player brings, and I think that could be a perfect off the bench piece for Milwaukee. What do you think about DeMarcus?
Yeah, if he plays, I'm not expecting him to play him like he did back in Sacramento, but if he plays at least solid and staying healthy, I think he could potentially be, you know, the biggest steal of the free agency potentially here.
Yeah, I remember a lot of teams didn't really want him, even last year, but LA decided to pick him up, and you could see like the first videos of him being, you know, like slimmed down and everything. It's just unfortunate that we didn't get to see him in action, because I think he could have showed some of the things he's been working on over the summer. I don't know about his health right now, but it's a possibility, probably a cheap possibility. It's probably one of the best cheap players you could get just because of what he offers. But it's also that uncertainty of you know, how healthy he is. Will he be good for the locker room? It's just some questions we don't know. And some other cheap options, we've also noted down JaMychal Green, who was a great role player for the Clippers. Can hit the three, can stretch the floor. Justin Holiday, also a sharpshooter, as well as Jordan Clarkson. He can be that guy off the bench who scores. It's going to be interesting to see if you know, he will take a cheaper deal to come to Milwaukee. But I think that could be an interesting option.
Yeah, I think I think all of these signings are low risk, high reward kind of signings. You know, you never know what you get with Boogie, but if he doesn't play a lot, you know, it's understandable because he's injured. JaMychal Green and Justin Holiday, I think they're solid signings. You know what you're gonna get day in and day out for them. And Jordan Clarkson, he was a sneaky Sixth Man of the Year candidate last season. So I think all of these potential signings Milwaukee could do is, you know, a low risk, high reward kind of thing. Plus, Milwaukee are contending, so that's just a bonus for even, you know, persuading them to signing there.
Yeah, so hopefully they make... I'm hoping they make a big deal, because I'm not expecting this team to be the same starting next season.
No, I'm honestly expecting changes as well. I think they have to. They kind of have to do it.
All right. We can move on to the Chicago Bulls, the team we talked about already regarding Philadelphia, as they could trade one of their key free agent who has a player option in Otto Porter Jr. If you look at their depth chart right now, they're kind of stacked with the power forward and center spots, and the only thing they're really missing is, I guess, shooting guard and small forward. So, what do you think of you know, potential trades or potential signings?
I think a great trade would be the Tobias Harris trade, just because it could be some well-needed scoring Chicago needs. I saw a little down year from Lauri Markkanen, but also, you know, they had Jim Boylan as their coach, so I wouldn't necessarily blame him, because in his rookie season he was very promising. You know, he looked like another version of, you know, Porzingis. You know, he could stretch the floor and he can score in a few variety of ways. It's just that, will that potential be untapped? But other than that, I think Tobias Harris is a solid trade for them. Also, Jaren Grant. Jaren Grant is a win-win player. You know, I think every team would love to have a Jaren Grant on their team. And I think Jeremy Grant. Jeremy Grant. When he was in the OKC, I think that's when he started to break out a lot more, and people are saying, you know, who is this guy? You know, he's playing solid off the bench. He helps you win games. So I think even if they get Grant, you know, it'll be solid for the Bulls all around. But with their key free agents, I think they should bring back Chris Dunn. because he's a great defender and he can also defend a few small forwards in the league. And I personally thought he should be all defensive team over Patrick Beverley, but that's just my opinion here. But I don't know if like Otto Porter, they could bring him back and maybe trade him, but I think it'd be better if they got Tobias Harris up instead of Otto Porter, just because they could get that second guy behind Zach LaVine. That's a guarantee. But other than that, Jay Crowder, Melton, and Derrick Jones Jr. are solid signings they can do as well on the wing and the shooting guard positions.
I've seen Derrick Jones's name thrown out a lot. I think a lot of teams could be looking at a cheap wing option, and we've seen Derrick Jones have his moments playing as a small ball center even. And we know his athletic abilities. He won the dunk contest, even though that was debatable if he should have won it or not. But I think Derrick Jones is an option that many teams will be looking at this summer. And I agree with the Jay Crowder. I think he's also going to be on some teams' radars because of his play in the playoffs. He just came off of his 5-year, $35 million contract, so he might be looking at a little more bigger deal. But it's also stated that he wants to re-up with Miami. So we'll see what happens with that. But as we can see, they also have the 4th pick in the draft. So we'll talk about like some draft, some potential draft players in a future episode. But I think that 4th pick could really be in play, and they could either trade for a proved player. But I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think Chicago's in a win now mode. And they should be looking at a player to maybe fill out either the small forward role or the point guard, even though Kobe White is a player who has had his sparks, but we just haven't seen enough to believe if he can be the starting point guard.
I guess we can go to the next team here. After Chicago, we have the Cleveland Cavaliers. They are another team in the Eastern Conference that, they're not necessarily in a win now mode. I think they should look for some drafts. Draft a young player they could use. Some potential trades they could necessarily do is Karis LeVert and Taurean Prince. I think Karis LeVert would be a solid addition to the Cavs. He could give them that well-needed scoring. They could maybe move Darius Garland to the bench. Maybe let him learn a little bit more from Karis LeVert. But they could also get a cheap power forward, small forward option in Taurean Prince, who could, who's a well-established player. He can score the ball pretty decently as well. But they also have the 5th pick, and they can maybe use that pick to trade for Karis LeVert or something else. We'll see. But most noticeably, key agents they have, 3 of them are bigs. They got Drummond, Tristan Thompson, and Ante Zizic. I think they should bring back Tristan Thompson, but Andre Drummond, I'm not 100% sure about, just because of his huge contract. What do you think?
I think the potential trades with LeVert and Taurean Prince were mainly if Brooklyn decided to go for a starting power forward or center with Kevin Love, and if he is like the odd man out, I can see where it'll most definitely be Tristan Thompson coming back. Drummond, I think the market's kind of dry for him. He does have a player option. I think he might pick that up. But other than that, maybe Ante Zizic, he's a restricted free agent. And I think these 3 players could also round out the center spots. But yeah, I think they should use the pick. They should try to draft either a small forward or a shooting guard, seeing how they don't really have that much of young players there. Or we have Kevin Porter Jr. I forgot about Kevin Porter Jr. But Darius Garland hasn't really showed that much, and I think he could be expendable at some point. So I think the 5th pick should be used on best player available. Let's say like that. And potential signings, again, we see Derrick Jones Jr. To fill out either a power forward spot or a small forward spot. Other cheap options in Shemi Ojale or Josh Jackson, who didn't have a nice start off to his career in Phoenix, but kind of slowly started to crawl his way back in Memphis. Even though his career is still a disappointment, maybe Cleveland can use this to their advantage and sign him on a cheap contract and just see how he can do with that.
Yeah, I think if they sign Josh Jackson, it'll be they won't necessarily gain much, but they won't lose much either. knowing that, Phoenix saw his potential as a pick. He was picked in the lottery. He's a lengthy defender who could also score the ball at times in college, but we just haven't seen that in the league. So if Cleveland pick him up, they won't he won't feel the pressure necessarily, although he played in Memphis and a rebuilding Phoenix team. We'll see how he does, but I'm not 100% sure on him yet.
All right, let's hope that Cleveland can pull off something interesting this offseason, because they have a lot of centers, a lot of doubts on what they should do. So we'll see about that. Next up, we have the Boston Celtics. Go ahead.
Moving on for Boston. There's been a few trade rumors with Boston picking up Miles Turner and maybe Victor Oladipo. But we've also added in they could pick up maybe Jeremy Lamb to help them off the bench. And also they could pick up Nemanja Bjelica to go on that center power forward spot, because what we've noticed with Boston is that their center's pick and roll defense is bad, and they could maybe try something new and maybe get a center who can shoot more frequently other than Daniel Theis. Daniel Theis, he can shoot the 3-ball if he's wide open, but sometimes he doesn't take that shot, and that's where Bjelica comes into play. He could help them stretch the floor more and, hit that open 3. But also with potential signings here, we've noted that 3 of them are centers, because Boston, they're not that good of a rebounding team. So JaVale McGee is a free agent, Harry Giles is a free agent, Ibaka is a free agent. They're all players who could help Boston's win now culture. Mostly JaVale McGee and Ibaka, but Harry Giles, we don't know yet. But with Ibaka and McGee, we know that they're a win now kind of players that can help Boston, maybe get them over the edge that they've been struggling a little bit with.
Yeah, I think Miles Turner and Lamb is one of the only deals a Celtics fan might do for Gordon Hayward. Even though I think Hayward will come back, and that trade with Lamb doesn't really seem that likely. Miles Turner would probably be the only center who's on a cheap contract that, could be an improvement other than, the draft. Bjelica, he's more of a power forward to small forward. I don't really know how much of his time he played as a center, but he could probably be a really small ball center. I don't really necessarily think his defense is that good. Maybe Miles Turner in that regard is a much better option. But for the potential signings, we have JaVale McGee. Even though he's not a shooter, but he's a great interior defender. Harry Giles, Celtics fans have been wanting him for a long time. He's a cheap option. He showed development last year, so he could definitely be a pickup. Serge Ibaka, it's doubtful that he'll come, because he has some better offers elsewhere. Most notably Toronto. They can offer him the most money. And Nerlens Noel, Boston native, but Ainge had a lot of opportunities to pick him up but didn't do so. But I still see him as a good offensive pick and roll player, as well as a good shot blocker. But what they should really be looking for is just that one guy off the bench who can, score the ball, as well as we also have Robert Williams, who is still developing. So I think Danny Ainge will make moves, seeing as they have 4 draft picks as well, 3 in the first round. They will make moves, adjusted to a degree of how big will the moves be. Do you think they will strike out on a big deal this offseason?
I think they should. Most notably because they have the talent and they have the opportunity to improve their team, as if their team wasn't already good because they reached the Eastern Conference Finals. So I think they should go all out and try to go for that big piece. However, it won't, even if they don't win the whole thing, it's still not that big of a loss, because they still have their 2 best players, or their 2 most important players, with Jalen and Jason, on long-term deals. So I think they should go for it and try and go all out for the chip and improve even more. That's what I personally think.
Ainge will have a lot of stuff to think about this offseason, as the team, you could clearly see they need more bench presence, and the window's long. They have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, not signed yet, but he'll probably get that extension this offseason. I think the window is really big here. It's just that, Ainge trying to understand what time is the best time to invest in those assets, because invest in different players, because they still have a lot of assets, still a lot of young players. We'll see how Romeo does next season. They said he has some potential. They liked what he showed in the practices. So we'll see with Romeo and we'll see with Boston. And are you ready to move on?
Yeah.
All right.
So
next we have
we have the Hawks here. The Hawks, I'm a little bit up and down with them. I can see them improving for next season because Clint Capella was injured for most of last season and they picked him up. But for potential trades they could do, we put in Victor Oladipo, Tim Hardaway Jr., and Kelly Oubre. I could see them, maybe picking up Tim Hardaway Jr. or Kelly mostly because, they're a player, like they're not on Oladipo's level yet. I'd say Kelly Oubre is closer to that. But their deals they'll help their team easily. Plus, they'll get a little bit more scoring because DeAndre Hunter, he's more of a defensive kind of player. Cam Reddish, he's been up and down. Kevin Huerter, he's mostly just a spot-up shooter. So we could see, I personally could see them try and pick up Kelly Oubre because the Suns they went undefeated in the bubble without him. So maybe he could be more expendable, but we'll see. But with Tim Hardaway Jr., I could see him start into that starting spot, shooting guard or small forward. Help Trae Young get that. He'll help him spread the floor as well. If they put Tim Hardaway Jr. at the small forward spot, they'd have a great, offensive lineup 1 through 3. But defensively, I'm not 100% sure there.
No, defensively they're gonna be garbage if that happens.
I do not want. I do not want Trae Young being on defense on my team at least. I think it's a proven fact that he's an awful defender. But
what else is a proven fact is that Atlanta's dead last in 3-point field goal percentage. So as you can see, some of the potential signings we have is basically players who shoot the threes at a high volume and also at a high percentage. KCP, one of the players rumored most recently, he's probably going to be re-signed by Los Angeles, but he's also being looked at by teams like Atlanta, who could definitely help their three-point shooting. Davis Bertans, obviously, probably one of the best big snipers you have in the league right now. He might still re-sign with Washington, that's most likely, but another option you could do. Atlanta's also one of the teams that have cap space, so they can offer more money than most of the teams. So Bertans could be a possibility. Will they decide to do so? I don't know. They have John Collins, but Bertans could be that nice small forward, power forward off the bench. So yeah, all the potential signings are basically guys who can help them score the three-pointers and improve on offense. But defense is what they should be looking at in the draft, in my opinion, with the 6th pick. There's some players in the top 10 who are, certified defenders. And I think also with Clint Capella being there, I think their defense is going to be better. But I think Trae Young and Kevin Huerter, they're going to need some help because that backcourt is abysmal on defense.
Yeah, that defense. I'd love to, if I was an NBA player personally, I'd love to play against Atlanta. Most notably, Joel Embiid had a 50 bomb on them, so that kind of explains it. But the offense is there. You can clearly see the offense is there. Trae Young, he's averaging great numbers, taking a lot of shots as well. But we'll see in the future how we'll go. If Trae Young can lead him to a winning culture, to be honest, I don't know 100% yet, just because he shoots a 3 at a very high volume. But, he's entertaining to watch, so we'll see.
Yeah, but Clint Capella is that guy you should be looking at. He didn't play any games, but he still has some value. He's one of those centers who doesn't shoot, but, he does other things that are really good. He protects the rim amazingly, as well as he's a great pick-and-roll player offensively, as well as he's a nice lob threat. So Trae Young can get some handy-daddy things going on there. So.
Yeah, the lobs are going to be crazy with Collins and Capella getting the lob from Trae Young. I know Collins can, he's probably going to, I think, he's one of the players who guarantees can get a poster off a lob. I think he's one of those guys.
Oh, yeah. So,
plus he's playing amazingly as well. Didn't he average 20 points last season?
He's like that 20 and 10 guy, yeah.
Damn, yeah.
But now with Capella coming, those stats are probably going to slide down a little bit. But I like the combination. If John Collins starts to shoot more threes, we saw him play the center last year just because Capella was out. But at power forward, he will probably need to stretch the floor. So if he can become a nice 36% 3-point shooter, I think that would be amazing for Atlanta.
Yeah, it's only like for Atlanta, it's only gonna go up from here. It just depends when and how they'll do it necessarily.
They just need time. They have a lot of young players, need some time to develop. So we'll see what Atlanta does.
All right, next up we have the Eastern Conference champions, the Miami Heat. Most notable trades they could do is, trade for Derrick Rose. They could maybe improve their win now scenario and trade Kendrick Nunn to Detroit and a pick for Derrick Rose. They could also do, which is a great signing in my opinion, great trade in my opinion, is pick up Drew Holiday, get that extra shot creating they could use, but also pick up Taurean Prince and LaMarcus Aldridge to help up with that power forward role. We noticed a little bit in the playoffs with Miami, their power forwards without Bam, it's a little bit, I'm saying a little bit lackluster. Kelly Olynyk is fine. Myles Leonard, I'm not 100% sure on yet. But for potential signings, and a huge one at that, Gallinari, he's been, he says he wants to play for a contender, and why not a better contender than the Eastern Conference champions, the Miami Heat, He fits their culture perfectly, he can stretch the floor, and he's a player who loves to win. So I think Gallinari would be a home run signing for Miami.
Plus he doesn't have to play against LeBron until the finals at least. So he gets rid of a tough Western Conference to go to the East, who's been a little lackluster for the past couple of years, but I think they're definitely going to pick up starting next year because there's some teams who are going to have healthy players, most notably Washington and Brooklyn. So I think East is going to be fun to watch. So Danilo for Miami, that's an interesting thing. He doesn't really want money, but Miami also doesn't want to clog their cap space for 2021-2022 when Giannis is a free agent. So the potential signings are probably going to be 1 or like 1+1 deals. Danilo, maybe he wants to sign. He would fit that power forward spot if they do not decide to bring Jay Crowder back, who I think is one of the players they should bring back because he just played so well. We also have Goran Dragic. What do you think of these two players? Do you think they should re-sign him?
I think they should re-sign Goran Dragic and Jay Crowder. They could sign Goran Dragic on a cheaper deal because he's getting up there in age. He could be that sixth man again they need. And also Jay Crowder, he's proved in the playoffs that he's a valuable asset, and also in the regular season. He's that secondary sniper behind Duncan Robinson they could gladly use. So I think personally they should re-sign both of them.
And we also have Aaron Baines, some interior defense off the bench. As you said, Kelly and Myles Leonard weren't really up there in defense. Aaron Baines could help. He can also shoot, so it doesn't necessarily limit them in offense as well. Aaron Baines is one of those players who could be looked at by a lot of teams just because of what he can bring with like his size and abilities. Serge Ibaka looks like a pipe dream just because Miami doesn't really have much space. But I think Serge fits the culture really well, as you said with Danilo. I think Serge would be a really nice player off the bench for them. And, Miami, of course, they're looking at Giannis for next year's free agency, but they should also keep, championship hopes in mind next year. So they should balance those two things out and decide what to do for next season.
Yeah, agreed with that. Next up, we have the Charlotte Hornets. I'm not 100% sure on Charlotte. I think they were one of the teams last season that was least interesting. It's like, yeah, they have players, but what else? Terry Rozier is fine. They also have Devontae Graham, who was great last season. But other than those two, and PJ Washington as well, who I rate highly, they could use some major improvements. They could potentially trade for Buddy Hield. They can trade one of their young pieces, maybe Malik Monk could be a great backcourt partner with De'Aaron Fox. Maybe his situation in Charlotte is the problem. They could also maybe go for a small ball 5-4 and Al Horford. They have nothing to lose. They can take his contract, help them improve a little bit. And also they could do Derek White. Derek White would be also a great improvement for them as well. But for potential signings, personally, I could see a Jeff Teague deal work pretty well for them. They could use that backup point guard with that veteran presence. But also Christian Wood, who was great in Detroit last season. I think he deserves a payday after how he played as well.
Yeah, I just realized Malik Monk played with De'Aaron in college.
Yeah,
so
they played in.
Nice reunion
it was in Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'd be a nice reunion for them. We can see they have the third pick. Most likely going to use it on a player.
Hey Zay, hurry up.
I would love to see LaMelo Ball on this team. It's just that what they should do with Miles Bridges and their shooting guard spot to see where he can fit. But Christian Wood, a player they could sign. Charlotte also one of the teams that has a little bit of cap space, so they could try to lure Christian Wood out of Detroit to be, their starting center. I think Cody Zeller, even though he showed some signs of improvements from the three-point line, I think Cody Zeller could be expendable. He's still on a kind of expensive-ish contract. As well as Nicholas Batum, even though we have him as a key free agent, he has a player option. And one of the deals I thought about is if you want to bring a veteran, you could trade Nicholas Batum for Al Horford straight up. Why would Philly do this? Because Nicholas Batum is on his last year of his contract, meaning they would get him off the books after next year and have a lot of cap space. Why would Charlotte do this? Because they have a veteran center, a veteran power forward, can teach the young guys, as well as maybe try to, contend in the Eastern Conference. I think they were 10th place last year. So if they just get one or two players, they might try to go for that 8th seed. Do you think they should contend?
I mean, I don't see why not. I haven't seen Charlotte, in the playoff spot in a long time. I'd say sure, why not? But it's not like they're going to do anything huge necessarily.
Also, looking at the key free agents, they have Bismack Biyombo. I just thought of the fact that he would be a nice rim protector for Miami. One of the cheap options for Miami. That just a quick thought. But yeah, that's all for what I have for Charlotte.
Yeah, I think we can go on now to the Knicks. The Knicks, I'm not going to lie, they've been really disappointing over the past few years with both free agent signings and trades and drafts. Zion didn't work, KD and Kyrie didn't work, so they went up with Julius Randle, Taj Gibson, and Bobby Portis. But for potential trades, they could try and do, Chris Paul has been in a few talks with them. Maybe he can get in that point guard spot. Buddy Hield as well. He could help them get the shooting as well. DeMar DeRozan, Victor Oladipo as well. New York Knicks, the Knicks, they have some money they can give, and also they have a few pieces they could trade. So I think Oladipo and DeRozan is a pipe dream, but who knows? Maybe DeRozan wants to play in the Knicks, and maybe that will persuade a little bigger player to sign with them. But the Knicks, they also have the 8th pick. But I think maybe they should try and trade down and maybe pick up LaMelo Ball. I think LaMelo Ball would be a great, option in New York.
Or trade up.
Yeah, trade up. Trade up,
he's like a top 3 pick, most likely.
Yeah, maybe they can, give away some pieces in trade and maybe get LaMelo Ball. I think he'd be a alright fit for the Knicks, but I don't know if he'll drop. He's a top 3 guaranteed, so I think that's a pipe dream. But for free agent signings, I see the Knicks maybe going for Fred VanVleet and Bogdanovic. Offensive players that'll help them. Fred VanVleet is a proven guard. He'll be here for a long time, as you know. He won the chip with Toronto, and he averaged 2 steals a game, so it'll help them defensively as well. Plus, he can shoot the 3 ball really nicely. So at least that he's going to get a contract. With Bogdanovic, I could see him, instant offense for the Knicks as well. He could slide into that shooting guard position pretty nicely. But also, they could improve their bigs as well. They could maybe play Harrell and Wood on the power forward spot, and also a few small ball centers. But I see Mitchell Robinson starting, so I could see them maybe sliding into power forward spot.
Knowing the Knicks, they probably would rather sign Montrezl Harrell and Christian Wood instead of signing Bogdanovic, which is an actual positional need, just because it's New York, with how they did last season with Marcus Morris, Taj Gibson, Julius Randle. Just stack that power forward spot for no reason. Players who need to have their minutes, but they just decide to, get players from the same position for no reason. As well as Bobby Portis, but he's now a free agent. Fred VanVleet, New York, probably the most desired, one of their most desired players this offseason could be Fred VanVleet. And also one of the only teams that could offer him more money than Toronto. He could, be in that point guard spot. The question is, do they really want to hinder the development of Dennis Smith Jr. and Frank? Dennis hasn't really been that good, but if you put in Fred, that means you basically don't want to try at all. I don't think New York should be contending. They just have a lot of veteran players who are shooters, as well as some young players. The only player that still has some hope for me is RJ Barrett, as well as Mitchell Robinson. But I don't think they should sign any free agents to that matter. I think they should sign more veterans who can help the young guys, as well as use the draft picks on young players who can be mentored by the veterans. That's what I think they should do.
Yeah, and I agree with that.
The Rosen thing is some rumors off the internet. He doesn't fit at all in my opinion. Oladipo also, I don't know. I think the only player they could use is Chris Paul because of the mentorship. A lot of Knicks fans also would like Chris Paul. So Chris Paul is like that guy who could be a trade for any team. And I think he's going to be in trade talks the whole offseason, so that's going to be a fun thing to watch.
Do you see him staying on the Thunder for next season?
I think he's going to get traded. It's just a matter of which team, because there are a lot of teams that could use him.
Yeah. Plus OKC, they could develop Shea and Dennis Schroeder as well. So yeah, they could also think about that as well.
Yeah.
Next up, we have the Orlando Magic. Most notably, potential trades, they could trade for Andre Roberson, Terrence Ferguson, and Zach LaVine. I think, I'm not 100% sure on Zach LaVine getting traded to Orlando. I don't know who Orlando could necessarily give up. Maybe Terrence Ross on a pick, maybe Aaron Gordon. I'm not 100% sure. But I see Zach LaVine maybe staying in Chicago until his contract is up. But for cheap improvements, they could trade for Andre Roberson and Terrence Ferguson. With Andre Roberson, they get that well-needed defense they could use, because other than Jonathan Isaac, they don't have defenders necessarily. And also Terrence Ferguson, he could be that spark plug off the bench, do dunks, help get some momentum back. But other than that, I don't see him doing much. But for potential signings, at least, I think personally, it's Jerian, right? Not Jeremy. Jerian Grant.
Jeremy Grant.
Jeremy Grant. I always mix up the names, but
are they brothers?
Jeremy and Jerian, yeah, they're brothers.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Jeremy Grant, he would be, I don't know if he's a potential 100% need for the Orlando Magic. Maybe if they get rid of Aminu, they could sign him, but no, actually they could use him, because Jonathan Isaac, he tore his ACL again, I think, and he's injured. Yeah. So they could use Jeremy Grant to just slot in nicely in that spot. But what I've noticed with Orlando is that their bench is not good at all. So they could use that instant scoring with Bryn Forbes, and maybe Pat Connaughton as well. But I think Bryn Forbes would be a solid bench option for Orlando at least.
Yeah, they definitely need to make a trade. At least somebody from their starting lineup. I think Markelle can stay. He showed some improvements. And Aaron Gordon is probably the guy who should be traded. That's why we added the Andre Roberson and Terrence Ferguson. I think OKC could be a good fit for him. I don't think Orlando really worked out for him that much. He couldn't really play his main position, and now Jonathan Isaac has been playing really well. So I think he's kind of dethroned Aaron in that way. So I think they should trade Aaron, as well as Vucevic. Should they get rid of Vucevic? I mean, they're kind of like the 8th seed for the past 2 years. Or were they the 7th seed last year?
Last year they were the 8th. They were 8th seed. They played Milwaukee in the first round.
Oh, now they were the 7th seed. Yeah. Do you really want to stay in that? No, they were the 8th seed.
Brooklyn played Toronto.
Yeah, but Toronto was 2nd place.
Yeah, Brooklyn played Toronto. Orlando's the 8th seed versus Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but last year they were.
The year before that, they were the 7th seed. Didn't they play Toronto last year?
They did. Yeah. So yeah, 7 and 8 seed. Do you really want to stay in that mediocrity?
No, I think personally, yeah, I'm sorry, but personally, Vucevic should get out of Orlando. I think he's a really underrated player. He could be a 3rd string for a championship team. But who he could go to, I'm not 100% sure yet.
Third option, third string. That's like no minutes.
Third option.
Yeah.
Goddamn. No, I
But,
think
and they could also develop Mo Bamba that way. That you get some minutes. So finally, you can see was he a top 5 player? Get some minutes finally. You know, he's bulked up, so maybe you could get him some shine. I don't know.
Yeah, I remember in college he was shooting the 3-ball. I wonder what happened when he came into the league, but I want to see Mo Bamba unleashed. I could just imagine the potential he has, if he became a lot better than he already became. I just if I could imagine Mo Bamba, shooting threes, getting rebounds, blocks. He's the prototype. He's everything you would want in a center. But it's just that potential we need to see, work in Orlando. And maybe getting rid of Vucevic, it's a risk to take to see Mo Bamba develop like that.
Also, a question is what they should do with Evan Fournier, who I think has a player option, if I'm not mistaken. Or a team option, I don't know. But he's going to be a free agent soon. So what should they do with him? Should they let him go? Should they trade him? What's the move here?
Personally, I think Orlando should just blow it up. I think they should trade Evan Fournier if they choose so. Maybe get a younger player. Because I wouldn't like this. The situation with the 8th seed is, in my opinion, one of the worst situations you can go to. If you're contending, you have the situations needed, you have everything you need to contend. If you're rebuilding, you have draft picks, you have an upside, but it's that middle side where you rarely improve, but you rarely get worse either. Which is, you're just there. So I think personally Orlando should just blow it up and maybe, trade Fournier and trade Vucevic. That's what I think.
Yeah, he has a player option, so you might pick that up because it's still a lot of money, 17 million. But, Fournier could trade him to a contender because it's his last year. He could be valuable. Better than nothing for him. So, and also they have the 15th pick. Also, kind of mediocrity. Could you really get a steal with a 15th pick this year? Absolutely, because we haven't really seen the players play that much. But knowing Orlando and their drafting, they have their ups and downs. I remember they drafted Chuma Okeke, I think in the first round last year, but he didn't play all season. He also hasn't been signed by Orlando, so we'll see what happens with the draft and what they decide to do. But I think Evan Fournier and Vucevic are the guys to look out for, if they get traded or not. That's at least what I think Orlando should do.
Yeah, same here.
And Aaron Gordon. I think those 3 guys, at least one of them should go. If they want to, make a difference at least. Because we've seen a lot of the same things from Orlando past years.
Yeah, at least get rid of one of them just to see what direction they're going to be heading. I'd rather move somewhere than just stand still at least.
Yeah.
Next up, we have Brooklyn. Potential trades. I think Bradley Beal is a pipe dream. He's stated time and time again he wants to stay in Washington. He wants to stay loyal there. But the other two, Victor Oladipo and Drew Holiday, I could see they're a little bit more easier to trade for. Mostly Drew Holiday. He would be that perfect third star, together with Kyrie and KD. Maybe they could trade Karis LeVert. I don't know. But Brooklyn's situation, they're win now. They have a solid point guard rotation. They have Karis LeVert. They have Taurean Prince and KD, solid. And they have a solid center rotation as well with DJ and Jared Allen. But they could improve. They could sign Jabari Parker. They could sign Saric. And they could sign Mo Harkless to go in that backup small forward and power forward spots because those are clear improvements they need. Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot, he played solid in the bubble, so he could stay, I guess. But Jonan Musa and Rodion Skuruc, they could be a bit expendable for a win now situation. So instant offense with Jabari Parker, that could be useful, and the stretch 4 in Dario Saric and a little bit of playmaking as well for him.
Oh yeah, his playmaking is really underrated.
Really good playmaking.
Yeah, Bradley Beal just up there just because he would be that perfect fit for Brooklyn. They also have key free agents with Joe Harris, who they should bring back, as well as Garrett Temple. That kind of rounds out their depth chart. if they do bring those guys back, because I think this is one of the deepest teams in the league. I think for a playoff game, you could have, the starters that you have, plus Dinwiddie, DeAndre Jordan, Joe Harris, and Garrett Temple. That's already 9 players, without thinking of, other potential free agent signings and, trades. So I think this team is deep, and they're definitely a playoff contender. My pick to go out of the East next year. But yeah, I think most likely we'll probably see a trade happen, not in the offseason, but at the trade deadline maybe. Just so, they can see what's up with Kyrie and Kevin, the record so far, how they've done. And at least then we will see if they need improvements. And at that time we'll see, where the improvement should be at. If they need some more scoring, if they need more defense, I think they should wait until the trade deadline to see if they should make a trade. But I think they should bring Joe Harris back. He could slot in that small forward starting spot, bring Taurean Prince off the bench. And with the signings, I think Dario would be an amazing signing. It's just that, will Dario take a pay cut to come to Brooklyn? Those are all questions waiting to be answered. But I think this is a really good team. And this offseason, with the 19th pick as well, I didn't know they had a 19th pick. They have some moves to make. And I think it's pretty obvious that they should keep Joe and Garrett. I think it's going to be... What do you think?
I think Joe Harris is a guaranteed lock to keep, but Garrett Temple, I don't know yet. He was okay last season, but no, they could have other options to explore, but I wouldn't say no bringing Garrett Temple back either.
They also have Wilson Chandler. They have a lot of veteran players who can score, but maybe there's some better options, free agency-wise. So we'll see with Brooklyn, but I really like their chances next year, and I really like the way their team is constructed. It's just that will Steve Nash have the, willingness to deal with players like Kyrie and KD, who are known to have some locker room issues. So I guess that's up to Steve Nash, and we'll see how that works out.
Yeah.
Good luck to Steve Nash, though.
I think Steve Nash will be a great coach. I think he's a guy who wants to win, and I think, when he played in the Lakers with Dwight, he was willing to hold him accountable. So I think, Steve Nash will be perfect for managing their egos. Plus, he's an MVP, so while, he knows the ins and outs of the league. So I think Steve Nash, it's a good signing, at least worth.
It's a lot of pressure, his first coaching job, and he coaches like a team who should be contending for a championship. That's a lot of pressure. So.
Oh yeah, but I think he'll be fine though. Personally. Right. But next up we have Indiana. They have been in a lot of trade talks. We've seen Oladipo here and there. We've seen Miles Turner and maybe a little bit of Jeremy Lamb. Potential signings they could do. They could maybe get some nice playmaking with Gordon Hayward. They could get a nice bench option in Rodney Hood, and Drew Holiday has been in a lot of trade rumors, so he's also here as well. For the draft, they don't have anything necessarily big. They only have the 54th pick. But in my opinion, at least, I think Indiana, they're on their way, slowly going on their way to that middle team that doesn't do much necessarily. They're a small market team. They're not going to do much, but I'm not taking anything away from them. Domantas Sabonis was injured during the playoffs, so maybe that is a huge reason why they got swept, or that is a big reason why they got swept. But for next season, we'll see how they'll do. They could sign Wes Iwundu, who would be a nice power forward addition over TJ Leaf, Jabari Parker, instant offense, because Indiana, they've struggled a little bit with their bench offense, so Jabari Parker would be that guy. And also improvements in 3-pointers. They could use Jay Crowder as well.
I think they should see how they do with their new coach. I don't think anybody's confirmed yet, but they did get rid of Nate McMillan, who has had some problems on the offensive end with the team. I think the fans didn't really like him. So, yeah. I think they should keep the players they have. Maybe the only expendable one should be Miles Turner. Have Sabonis be that center. Trade Miles Turner to a favorable place and get some pieces back. But I think they should mostly run it back. See how they do with the new coach, because they're that gritty team that's always going to be there, even though they don't really have that much star power. They have some good players, but not really like stars. Or they have an all-star, Domantas, but it's not like a first-class all-star. It's like a bench player all-star, in all-star games. But I think they should run it back and see how they do next year. if they can get out of the first round for once, hopefully, maybe that kind of defines what they should do. If they get unlucky in the playoffs again, maybe then you should look at some trades, because Oladipo is going in that final year. It's a big question. Should you trade him to get something for him, or should you leave him play out the year, see how he is, because he could bolster his value up in the middle of the season, because we now think he's kind of injured a little bit. He's been rusty, so his value for trading currently is not at the highest. So for me, I think they should just run it back. And with the signings, Jay Crowder, you would definitely be an improvement over TJ Leaf. Gordon Hayward, trade talks for Miles Turner and Jeremy Lamb. He could be that guy coming in that power forward spot, slotting Sabonis down to center. It's all about what the Indiana Pacers ownership really wants to do here. As you said, with the middle of the pack teams, do you want to stay there? What do you want to improve in? Because most of their players are kind of, going into their mid-20s, already reaching their primes. So it's going to be a decision. It's going to be a good decision for Indiana to see what they want to do.
Yeah.
That's my rant right there.
Yeah, at least there. Next up, we have the Detroit Pistons. They are fringe of the playoffs, but they're not necessarily that good. Potential trades they could do is such as trade Kendrick Nunn for Derrick Rose. I think that's a good thing to do because, I think once they got rid of Drummond for John Henson, I think it's like, okay, Detroit, they're going to blow it up. They should maybe unload Blake Griffin, and they might as well let Derrick Rose go to a contender and try and get his ring. So I think they should at least get rid of Derrick Rose for Kendrick Nunn, and they could also pick up Kelly Oubre for a solid improvement as well. But for signings, they could go for cheap options that that'll work immediately. You know what you're gonna get. Justin Holiday, DJ Augustine could slot in that backup position. Kendrick Nunn, solid defender, and also Aaron Baines, who can stretch out the floor. So those are signings that they'll help keep Detroit a little bit afloat, but not put them over the top.
It's something that they should keep in mind as like a 1-year project, because they don't really have that many pieces that they can rebuild from. They only have Sekou and maybe Luke Kennard, as well as Christian Wood. But in my opinion, they shouldn't re-sign Christian Wood if he's on a big contract. So we'll see with him. But yeah, Aaron Baines could be a nice backup. Justin Holiday off the bench. DJ Augustine, backup point guard if you decide to get rid of Derrick Rose. They also have the 7th pick. They should definitely use that pick. Maybe even trade up in the draft if they do have some other assets they can trade to improve their draft stock. Chris Dunn could be a nice player to, that defense. We know Detroit being that gritty team, those bad boy Pistons years, as well as 2003, 2004, I think it was. Those teams. I think Chris Dunn kind of fits the mold there. It's just that can they really, free up some space for him? Can they get rid of Blake Griffin? Do you think any team really wants Blake Griffin right now?
With that contract, no. Maybe, let's say maybe the Knicks could take him, but no. That contract is huge for, a guy who's a little bit past his prime, but I'm glad he's, got his All-Star year last season. But this season, he was a little bit disappointing this season. But his contract is huge, so I don't think many teams would want that.
I like his play when he is fully healthy, though. Just unfortunate that he's had his injury history. If he didn't have this contract, which team do you think he would be a good fit for?
A great fit for maybe Miami. He could maybe help run. He could shoot. He could get offense when you need it. I think he'd be great for Miami fully healthy.
All right. So hoping for Derrick Rose trade, he definitely needs to get his last opportunity, or like one of his last opportunities for a ring. So we're hoping for that. We'll see what happens with Christian Wood as well as with their draft. Moving on, we have Toronto.
At least for Toronto, they bounced out of the second round, so we clearly see they need some changes. Most notably, Pascal Siakam got exposed in the playoffs. Kyle Lowry became god against Boston for quite a few periods, and they need some improvements as well. We clearly see that. So potential trade package, they could use Miles Turner for the 5 spot, Oladipo maybe could get that second star with Pascal, but also get some nice bench power with Kobe White. So Derek White. God damn it, Derek White. I don't know why I fuck up, but Derek White, he could be solid, bench piece for Toronto. But for potential signings, they could go for a nice cheap option with Torrey Craig, and they could also get the Morris brother from the Lakers. But if they need center improvement, which they do, if they don't get Miles Turner, they could use some options such as they could use Kelly Olynyk, who's from Canada himself, and they could also use Aaron Baines, who's a cheap option, who is valuable for many teams as well.
I think the biggest question is what they're going to do with their free agents. It really relies on that. So what do you think of Fred and Serge? Because we already know Mark is not going to play in the NBA. So what do you think of Serge and Fred? What they should do, and what Toronto should do with them?
I think Fred should be. I think they should keep Fred VanVleet if they want to stay up afloat. Terrence Davis is solid, but he's not there 100% yet. For me, with Serge, it depends how much money he's asking. If he wants to go for a big offer, I don't think Toronto should bring him back. But if he wants to go for a little bit cheaper option, I think Toronto should be willing to offer that.
I think what they should be looking for is some young players in the draft, because Siakam, he's definitely their number one player. Lowry's going into that last year of his contract. Norman Powell, he's shown some, flashes of being good, but he hasn't really had the opportunities. Maybe if you don't bring back Fred, that could lead to more opportunities for Norman. But if you don't bring back Fred, that leaves a huge gap for point guard after next season when Kyle Lowry's contract is done. Do you have Terrence Davis? Is he good enough to be your starting point guard? You don't really have the high picks. You only have 29 and 59 this year. So what's the move here? They're definitely going to be in the playoffs if the roster is like this, how they have it right now, and they just bring in some role players. I think this is they need to definitely improve that center spot. They have Devan Harris right now. Or Devan Hernandez, I'm sorry. Who's definitely not even a role player right now. He's just a project. I think they need, other than the center spot, if the team stays like this, they're definitely a playoff team for next year. It's just what's the future for them? Because I don't think this kind of team, if they do bring back Serge and Fred, I don't think they're gonna win, because they couldn't even get past Boston. They were one OG Anunoby shot from being possibly swept. So they definitely need to think of what they should do. And I like the cheap free agent signings if they do decide to go for another run with Markieff Morris, Aaron Baines, Kelly Olynyk, some shooters off the bench for the center and power forward spots. But yeah, it's going to be the toughest thing for Toronto, in my opinion, is the Serge and Fred VanVleet thing. In the same year when the market is dried up, they're probably the only team that could offer him any substantial amount of money. It's just that, does Toronto want to overpay on these guys, knowing that their championship window is probably closing with Kyle Lowry getting older and his contract about to be up?
Yeah, when we're thinking about it like that, I think maybe they should let them go, because when you're seeing how the East has been constantly improving, maybe it's good to go a little bit younger. Brooklyn's on the rise, Boston's getting better, Miami's getting better, and Milwaukee as well. There are 4 teams already that I'd put above Toronto right now. So maybe they should go younger. But with the draft picks, at least, I think they could draft them, because when you see how well Toronto has been drafting and signing undrafted players, why not? Why not? So regardless of drafting or trading, it's a dub regardless. But with free agents, maybe they should let them go, because the championship window, as you said, it's closing.
Or what I could see is maybe a sign and trade, just because Toronto can offer that money, and they can maybe get some kind of young asset or a draft pick. I think that would be a huge W for Toronto. It's just that I definitely fully trust Masai, and I know he definitely has a plan. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do. It's really going to be interesting to see what they do. I'm curious as well, because, it could go either way with Toronto. They could try to go for a championship, or they could try to, flip the switch and maybe go a little bit younger while still contending. So that's what's up with Toronto. Plus, their drafting has been stupendous, so we'll see what they do this year with so much uncertainty of players, and anybody could, be in the first round. They could be in the second round. They could go undrafted. That's in the future episode of like what players we see going in drafts. But Toronto can definitely go either way this offseason.
Yeah, either or for them at least. I guess we have the last team right now in the East. We have the Washington Wizards. I'm so excited to see John Wall coming back. I've been saying for years, at least from my people I know, he's one of my favorite point guards to watch. He brings that playground aspect that I haven't at least seen since Allen Iverson. But for potential trades they could do, they have Aaron Holiday, and there's also Nikola Vucevic. Nikola Vucevic would be a great starting center for Washington. They could maybe trade Thomas Bryant for Vucevic. That could be a win-win situation for both teams, as Orlando, they could go younger, and Washington could get that little improvement with Bradley Beal and John Wall. Plus, Rui Hachimura was solid last season. They also have the 9th pick, most notably, so they could maybe include that for the package with Vucevic. But for potential signings, they could go for cheap options such as Boucher and Kanter and Cousins. I think Kanter's a great rebounder. Plus, everybody knows that he's a free agent, so he could go anywhere. Chris Boucher, he's a solid player for Toronto. Untapped potential, but he's solid nonetheless. He could be a great backup with, rotational second piece off a bench team. Plus, they have Boogie Cousins, which a low risk, high reward yet again. He could be great. He played with John Wall in college, so it would be great to see maybe those two get reunited. Plus, they could replace Ish Smith with Jeff Teague as a backup, so that would be a good enough improvement as well. Why not? While you guys are contending for a playoff spot.
Yeah. For key free agents, they should definitely bring back Davis.
100%.
Have him start small forward, or either way with Rui. Have him play both forwards with Rui. I know I watched a podcast where Bertans was on talking about what he wants to do in the next year, and they showed like clips of Washington playing Boston in the playoffs, and they want him to do that Otto Porter Jr. type role. Stand in the corners, he gets wide open threes, and he says he's okay with that. He would want to have that. So I don't really see a point of them going young because they have 2 big contracts now. Of course, Bradley Beal could be traded anytime because he's a great player. John Wall, on the other hand, a lot of uncertainty there because he's had 2 injuries in a row. He hasn't played competitive basketball in a long time. They could try to go for a potential playoff berth next year, especially if you do bring DeMarcus Cousins. And a starting lineup with John Wall, Bradley Beal, Bertans, Hachimura, and Cousins. Of course, with signing some decent veteran players off the bench, I think that team could be enough to go to the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. And having players like John Wall and Bradley Beal, I think any game is winnable. So, what do you think? Do you think they should do that?
Yeah, I think they should. Washington, they're a sleeper team. I'm getting those Golden State Warrior "We Believe" vibes. They could cause problems for any team they play against, regarding on any given night. It's just
I hope this doesn't backfire.
It's just the consistency they need. But with the weapons that they have, John Wall, Bradley Beal, Rui, Davis Bertans, they could beat any team on a good day. So we'll only see. But if everything goes well for them in the offseason, I could see them reaching the playoffs.
They have been a great offensive team, scoring a lot of points. The only issue has been defense. So they definitely need somebody for defense. I'm looking at Chris Boucher, maybe off the bench, as a player who can defend the rim. They have a lot of young guys currently in their depth chart with Jerome Robinson, Isaac Bonga, and Mo Wagner, who have shown improvements, but are they going to be good enough to, play good defense against, the good teams in the Western and Eastern Conference? So I think they should look for a possible defender as well as a maybe knockdown shooter with the 9th pick in the draft. So, a lot of decisions for Washington as well. But I think getting Bertans back should be your number 1 priority, as well as maybe looking at a cheap, low risk, high reward, as you said, signing from the free agent market. So I think that's what they should be thinking about going into this offseason.
Yeah, 100% agreed. they could, it'll only go up from Washington from here, but 100% they should go for Bertans, as a, get him back by any means necessary. But
right.
but yeah, we've been talking about all the teams, what they should do. Maybe you guys can let us know what you guys think, what you guys would have done differently. This is our list at least, but at least next time we're going to be going in the Western Conference, and we're going to see what each Western Conference team can do.
Yeah.
All right, bye.
All right, take care.